All new today. A Dr. Phil interview like you've never seen before.
Did you rape and murder Stacey Stites?
No, I absolutely do not.
From death row.
I didn't do this crime, and here they are trying to take my life.
Reed was convicted of the rape and murder of 19-year-old Stacey Stites in 1996.
Now,
it took her 19 years to come forward.
New witnesses.
This isn't one of your witnesses. This is someone from her life.
She told me I'm sleeping with a black guy named Rodney.
The jury didn't hear any of these folks.
3 new medical experts say it is medically impossible for you to have been the killer. But yet, here you sit.
Reed will be put to death Wednesday, November 20th.
The clock is ticking.
They have the truth. They know the truth.
It was April 23rd, 1996. The body of a young bride-to-be was found half naked on the side of a country road in a small Texas town. In the wee hours of the morning, 19-year-old Stacey Stites was on her way to work 30 miles away from the apartment she shared with her fiancé, a police officer, Jimmy Fennell. But Stacey never made it to work. 1 year later, a young black man, Rodney Reed, was arrested for and eventually convicted of Stacey's rape and murder. Retired NYPD Detective Sergeant Kevin Gannon has been investigating this murder. Here's what he has to say.
The body of Stacey Stites was recovered off a dirt road in a wooded area, just wearing blue jeans and a bra. And she was recovered with ligature marks around her neck. Near Stacey's body was 2 beer cans, a white shirt, and a broken belt that appeared to be cut in half that was found on the dirt road. At the time of her death, Stacey was living with her boyfriend, Jimmy Fennell. Prosecutors claim that at 2:45 a.m., Stacey took Jimmy's truck to drive to the H-E-B grocery store for work. Prosecutors believe that sometime during Stacey's drive to work, she encountered Rodney Reed on foot, and somehow Rodney made his way inside that vehicle. They say at that time, Rodney took Stacey to a wooded area where he raped her and strangled her with the leather belt. Prosecutors claim that Rodney took the truck to a local high school and abandoned it, accidentally leaving the second half of the leather belt outside the truck. The only evidence to link Rodney to Stacey's murder are 3 sperm cells found inside of her. Rodney Reed is in jail, scheduled to die November 20th for Stacey's murder.
Well, Rodney, now 52 years old, has spent 22 and a half years locked in a 60-square-foot cell on death row for a crime he says he did not commit. But the clock is ticking for Rodney. He is scheduled to be executed in just 41 days.
Rodney Reed was scheduled to be put to death in March of 2015, but the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals halted his execution less than 2 weeks before it was planned.
His execution was put on hold temporarily because the court decided to allow new evidence from his attorneys.
New witnesses had come forward. The time of Stacey's death came into question, and there were requests for more DNA testing.
Innocence Project attorney and lawyer for Reed, Bryce Benjett, believes the key to Reed's future is hidden in evidence from the past.
When they rip clothing, when they hold a belt with such force to strangle somebody, that leaves DNA. DNA that couldn't be discovered back in 1998.
After 9 appeals and a delayed execution, state prosecutors are now asking to execute convicted murderer Rodney Reed by the end of this year.
So why do top medical examiners, law enforcement officers, and even the Innocence Project believe that Texas is about to execute an innocent man? Well, I wanted to find out for myself. Now, this was a first for me. I was allowed inside death row, where I was given 1 hour to hear why Rodney says they've got the wrong man, and why he says he should be given a new trial to prove to the world he's not a murderer. How are you? Good to meet you.
Hello, Mr. Phil.
Well, Rodney, out of respect for your time and the need to get the message out, I'm going to just kind of jump right into things. Did you rape Stacy Stites?
No, I didn't.
Did you murder Stacy Stites?
No, I didn't.
Were you present when it happened?
Absolutely not.
Well, we'll see more of my interview with Rodney throughout the hour, but first, retired NYPD Detective Sergeant Kevin Gannon and victimologist Dr. Lee Gilbertson are here to tell us why they believe the state's theory is wrong. Now, they are joining us with Rodney's attorney, Bryce Benjett, of the Innocence Project. So, gentlemen, thank you all for being here. Now, you guys know that I went to Texas and interviewed this man, and I went in with a completely open mind. I, of course, read everything about the case, studied it, but I've spent a lot of my career focused on deception detection. And I wanted to look him in the eye. I wanted to ask questions. I wanted to hear what he said and read him at the time, and I did, and I'm going to talk about that as we go along. Now, the Innocence Project doesn't just take any case. Why this one?
Well, this is a case I've actually personally been working on for almost 18 years now. And so I really appreciate your approach, which is to really look at this with an open eye and not have preconceived notions and just figuring out what happened.
So 20 people on death row have been exonerated primarily by DNA evidence.
That is just with DNA evidence.
Yeah.
And when you look at broader types of evidence, whether it's eyewitness identification or false confessions, the numbers are actually much, much larger.
Much higher, of course.
Yeah.
And Kevin, after looking at the evidence, what do you think Rodney's attorney missed in the trial?
I looked at the autopsy report. I said, don't get too carried away because I don't think this young man killed this woman. And they were like, what do you mean? So I was reading the autopsy report, and it didn't line up with, you know, the fact that she was strangled and that she was dead for that extended period of time of only 12 hours. It looked to be longer. There was a greenish tint up her body all the way up to her neck. And I know from levels of decomposition from being a homicide investigator, she's almost dead 24 hours. I said, there's no way this guy could have committed this murder unless you can put him back in the apartment with the woman the night before. I said, I stake my life on it.
When I looked at the trial record, I was aghast at witnesses that were available that were not called, right, expert testimony that was not refuted. I mean, am I wrong?
No, and the lawyers who were appointed to represent Mr. Reed had less than 2 months, really, to work on the case. They had not hired experts. They had not done forensic testing. They had not interviewed any number of the witnesses before they already started picking a jury and started trial. And so this was a case that was tried by the seat of their pants.
Look, I don't care where you stand on the death penalty, whether you're for it or whether you're against it. I've never met anybody that's for executing the wrong person or executing a person that they're not sure of. Exactly. I mean, the prosecution told the jury Rodney's DNA was a match. In your opinion, does that make him the killer?
No.
He's accused of rape and murder, and sure enough, his sperm is inside her body. That seems pretty damning on its face, does it not?
Until you start looking at the totality of the relationship between Rodney and Stacy. I mean, they had been seeing each other for some time and having a very intimate relationship.
But you also found only 3 sperm cells and a man.
Well, actually, you did. You found 3 heads of sperm cells,
right, so
which means they were highly degraded.
Exactly.
Her body was found at 3 in the afternoon, 3:25, 2:45, somewhere around in there.
Right.
Okay, and if the rape had taken place between 3 and 3:45, that would have been 12 hours. Right. At that time, how many sperm cells would you expect to find?
Well, everything inside should have been intact. And only those that were exposed to the air would start to depreciate and degrade at that point.
So you're talking millions, though.
Yeah.
Not 3.
3.
And this was the thing that the jury was told and focused very much on. The jury was told because they had these 3 intact spermatozoa that there had to have been intercourse within 24 hours, that it's impossible for these to be there if there was intercourse the day before. Well, that essentially negated Mr. Reed's defense.
And we'll talk about that in a minute. Coming up, when Rodney was first interrogated by the police, he says he made one big mistake. I asked him about that straight up. You're going to hear what he says when we come back. You denied knowing her.
Well, yes, I did. I did do that.
So you lied to the police?
I did.
Why?
Monday, she says her teenage daughter went from straight-A cheerleader to suspensions, smoking, and sexting.
I smoke weed, party, fights. I'm a teenager. What else am I gonna do?
You said, I'm doing what normal teenagers do. Drugs at school, suspended 40 times. That's not normal.
But who's to blame for this bad behavior?
Well, here's a little cheat sheet for you. You can't quit being a mother.
That's Monday. Then on Tuesday, his girlfriend covers for him.
He's punched you in the face.
And his mother was willing to lie to the police for him.
Can I tell you why?
Do I look like I care why?
New Dr. Phil, Tuesday. We now return to a Dr. Phil exclusive.
An execution date now set for Texas death row inmate Rodney Reed. Reed will be put to death on Wednesday, November 20th. Reed was convicted of killing Stacy Stites in 1996.
It's the 11th hour for death row inmate Rodney Reed. The state of Texas is scheduled to execute him in just 41 days. Now, Rodney's DNA was found on murder victim Stacy Stites. But how did it get there? I wanted to find out from Rodney himself, so I traveled to death row in Livingston, Texas. It's where Rodney has spent 22 and a half years of his life for a crime he says he didn't commit. Now, I want to tell you that I said up front that I went into this with an open mind. On TV, there's always a clear resolution at the end of the hour when they cut to the music track and start rolling the credits. Things aren't that clean cut in real life. There are facts here that don't help or support him, and I didn't gloss over anything. I asked the hard questions about the things that don't favor him because I wanted to see how he answered those questions. And we're going to see some of that right now. Well, Rodney, out of respect for your time and the need to get the message out, I'm going to just kind of jump right into things. When you found out about her death, what was your reaction?
I was shocked. I couldn't believe it.
But how long after her death was it before they contacted you and talked to you about it?
It was about a year.
And when they got in touch with you, you thought it was about a drug charge.
Yes, they actually went by my mom's house, and she said they got a warrant for you for a delivery charge or something like that.
When you went down thinking it was for drugs, you got down there, then they started asking you about Stacy.
Not right off, and it was the next day that they asked me about Stacy.
Right. And you denied knowing her.
Well, yes, I did. I did do that.
So you lied to the police?
I did.
Why?
When they flashed this picture of Stacy, and that right there startled me because I was like, what are they trying to do here? Because they already got me in there on a bogus charge. I guess I just went into defense mode because I didn't want to be incriminated in any kind of way with her death.
And how long did you maintain that lie before you told them, well, actually, I do know her? And
it wasn't really that long because when I got my first attorney, you know, I opened up and explained to him what was going on.
You go to trial, the verdict comes in, and you are found guilty, and then they declare that you have been given the death penalty. What went through your mind?
I was shocked because I didn't do this crime.
Now, Rodney had an alibi, so why didn't the jury hear from his alibi witness?
Really, you've got this trial that was a railroad. Basic facts, basic science what you would say, the obvious witnesses just were left by the side.
Well, here's what the alibi witness had to say. Quote, "We spent most of the night in the lot next to his parents' house talking with other people. I asked Rodney if he would check the time. He went into his parents' house and returned to tell me it was 4:45 a.m. I went home and returned to Rodney's house about 6 a.m. We worked from about 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. We punched time cards. This alibi witness was with him till 4:45. According to the prosecution timeline, she was dead by then.
She's already dead and dumped by 4 a.m.
Okay, next, we're going to meet the woman who says Stacy told her about the secret affair she was having with Rodney, but it took her 19 years to come forward. So what does she have to say? We're going to reveal that next.
I asked Stacy if she was really excited to get married. She proceeded to tell me that she wasn't that excited to get married because she was sleeping with a black guy named Rodney. I was, wow, Stacy.
We now return to a Dr. Phil exclusive. Rodney Reed's death row countdown. Is an innocent man about to die?
Who killed Stacy Stites? The Innocence Project believes there is enough new information to clear Texas death row inmate Rodney Reed from being executed in 41 days. Rodney at first denied to police that he even knew Stacy. He now says that they were actually having a secret affair that very few people were aware of. You obviously had relations with Stacy, but were they consensual?
Yes, they were, absolutely.
And how long had you been in a relationship with her?
I actually met her in late October, early November of '95.
Right. She was killed in April of '96, so we're talking about a 5 or 6 month period.
Right.
How many times did you two see each other?
Some weeks I would see her maybe once or twice a week, and there were sometimes I didn't even see her at all.
And you knew at the time that she was engaged, right?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't seem to me that she was really, because if she was, she wouldn't have been having a relationship with me.
And how long before her death on April 23rd had you been with her?
I was with her that late night Sunday, early morning Monday. It was the 21st, 22nd.
Late the night of the 21st or early morning hours of the 22nd.
Right.
And you had an alibi witness.
Yes. My alibi witness that was with me that particular night, morning, we went to work together.
But did other people know you were having a relationship with her?
Yes, there were people that knew, but there were people in my circle, friends and family members of mine.
Do you know Alicia Slater?
No, I don't.
She says that she knew Stacy for a year. She said Stacy said that she knew you and that she spoke very highly of you. She said she didn't tell the police about your relationship with Stacy because she didn't want to get involved and now feels guilty about it. How do you feel about the fact that she's let you sit here for 19 years without ever bringing this out?
I look at it this way. It kind of goes back to when I was asked, did I know Stacy? And the first thing because I didn't want to get involved and I didn't want to be part of an investigation. And I can see where she didn't want to be a part of an investigation. I can say that I do appreciate that she, took the initiative to step forward, say something. I don't even know her.
A key witness who corroborates Rodney's story is Alicia Slater, who has come forward after 19 years to confirm that, yes, Rodney and Stacy were having a secret affair.
Stacy and I worked at a grocery store in Bastrop, Texas. Stacy and I hung out at work only. We talked about girl things, boyfriends. Stacy told me that she was engaged to a police officer in Giddings. It was one of the days at lunch, and I asked her about her engagement ring and if she was really excited to get married. And she then proceeded to tell me that she wasn't that excited because she was sleeping with a black guy named Rodney. I was, wow, Stacy, you need to be careful. In the 90s, Bastrop, Texas did not have many interracial couples. It was kind of an underlining racism that no one really talked about because that's just how it was back then. Stacy did say that she was worried about Jimmy and what he would do if he ever found out she was cheating on him. So she had told me that she was sleeping with Rodney, and it was about a month later that she was murdered. When I found out Stacy had died, my first thought was, did she get caught cheating?
Okay, thank you for being here, and thank you for coming forward and talking about this. So you have no doubt that Stacy was in a relationship with Rodney?
I have no doubt. She told me. And I was talking to her about her engagement ring. I asked her if she was excited about it, and she didn't seem very excited. And she quickly followed that with, well, it's because I'm sleeping with a black guy named Rodney.
You and I are from Texas, and I love Texas. I love the people in Texas. I think they're good people. But there's a broad range of values and beliefs. Tell me about Giddings and Bastrop and that part of the state 20 years ago.
I think back then we didn't really realize how racist it was because we were living in it. You know, I grew up there from kindergarten through my senior year before I moved out of Bastrop, and you know, it was definitely, there weren't many interracial couples at all.
Back then, would there be a lot of judgment about something like this? Is that why?
Definitely.
Now, Stacy's co-workers affidavit, there were several times that I would see Stacy talking to a young black man inside the store. She seemed happy to see him and would be in a good mood. I recall that a few times that Stacy's fiance entered the store to visit her, she would become a nervous wreck. Then Stacy's cousin, in 1995, I remember seeing Stacy coming out of the Dairy Queen with a black man. Stacy and the black man got into a car that Stacy was driving. After Stacy's death, I remember seeing a picture of Rodney Reed on the news. Rodney Reed was the same man I saw with Stacy at the Dairy Queen.
None of this is what was told to the jury. The jury didn't hear any of these folks.
Well, coming up, Kevin and Doc believe Stacy did not die from strangulation at all. They're going to talk to us about how they think she actually was murdered after the break.
She absorbed almost like 16 ounces of fluid in her lungs. She put the water on, and he came in with the belt behind her, and he pushed it down like this. As far as I'm concerned, there was a drowning. Yep.
We now return to a Dr. Phil exclusive. Rodney Reed's death row countdown. Is an innocent man about to die?
In 2014, retired NYPD Detective Sergeant Kevin Gannon and victimologist Dr. Lee Gilbertson say they made discoveries in the murder of Stacy Stites that changed everything for death row inmate Rodney Reed and his team of attorneys.
We know, through the physical forensic evidence, that the murder actually took place well before midnight in this apartment.
When you look at the autopsy report and look at the injuries, most of them are on the left side. So everything looks like the attack came from the left. When you walk in the bathroom and you look at the tub, the faucet and everything are on the left.
She was wet. Her jeans were still wet. So I'm thinking she's clothed. Maybe she put the water on, and he came in with the belt behind her, and he pushed it down like this. And that's where she might get some of the burning.
When we look at the injuries that she has, the bruising on her head, second-degree and third-degree burn injuries, everything's predominantly on the left side that's pre-death.
And the lividity was all in the front part of her body. The body was found, there was a lot of lividity from here up, right? So I think he left her over the tub like this. See the hands? They were white at the tips, which means the fingers had contact marks, which means her fingers had to be somewhere like this, down, right, where all the blood settled, but they didn't settle in the tips. The amazing thing is usually when you strangle, especially a manual strangulation, her hyoid bone should have been ruptured. Her larynx should have had some kind of damage. But the first thing that should have occurred when somebody's strangling somebody is the petechia in the eyes, the little blood vessels, should burst. She doesn't even have that. Yet she has petechia on the top of the head. So you can see that there's punching down. He's pushing her down into where the spigot was. She absorbed almost like 16 ounces of fluid in her lungs. So as far as I'm concerned, there was a drowning.
We're talking about this full of water.
Right. Yeah. Even more than that.
More than that.
Yeah,
More
each
than that.
lung.
You're talking about almost a 16-ounce bottle. I see no other way of the drowning.
Now, upon further investigation of the evidence, Kevin and Doc say they believe the crime scene was actually staged.
Prosecutors believe that Stacy left for work, and while driving, she encountered Rodney somewhere on the trip. The only problem is, everything shows she was dead already in that vehicle. We know we have decomposition of fluid on the baseboard of the vehicle. And then decomposition of fluid was found on the hump of the truck. And the most important thing is there's no DNA, including even fingerprints, belonging to Rodney in the vehicle. The only fingerprints in that vehicle belong to Stacy and her boyfriend. So where's Rodney? Why isn't his fingerprints on the steering wheel anywhere on the vehicle? Because he was never in that vehicle. So we're like 20 miles away from Stacy's house. The belt is found
Literally right here.
Right partially on the road.
And then the brush starts, and there's the body right there.
Right. She's laying right here. There's no way you're gonna miss this body like this. Then when you look at the body, Stacy's nails were cut. Now, we know that she's supposed to be getting married in the next week. No woman is letting her nails get cut down.
It's almost like somebody went out of their way to make sure that any DNA that was possibly there was gone.
Who else would know that except somebody maybe in the law enforcement business? This is typical of a staged crime scene.
Okay, you have no doubt about this, correct? The lividity doesn't add up to this body being face up from the time of death, correct?
Correct.
And explain what you mean by that.
Well, when you die, the blood settles in whatever position you're in, so into the capillaries. And so if you're face down, it's going to be on the front part of your body, and if you're on the back, it's going to be on the back. She had to be down for a period of time for at least probably 6 hours for that blood to almost fix, where you see the extensive amount of blood on the front arms. Then she's found back. Everything shows that she was dead hours earlier before she was ever moved.
But it is medically and scientifically impossible for Stacy Stites to have been murdered in this 3-hour window.
There's no way, scientifically, that it could have been Rodney.
Correct, 100%.
We now return to a Dr. Phil exclusive. Rodney Reed's death row countdown. Is an innocent man about to die?
Let's take a look at possible scenarios here. And you guys provided a map, and I've simplified this a little bit. But Giddings is where the apartment was, where she was residing. At 10 p.m. to 12 a.m., that is when you're saying that the victim would have had to have been drowned in the apartment if that's what took place. And then on the morning now, past midnight, we go into the next morning, early morning hours, 3 to 3:25 a.m., the suspect has moved the body to the woods in the red pickup. And when we look here, this blue dotted line is a 30.5 mile distance, and that represents from the apartment 22 miles to the woods where the body was, you say, placed, and then 8.3 miles to the school where the pickup truck was abandoned. You're saying that if she was drowned in this bathtub, killed in the apartment and or drowned in the bathtub, then taken here after she had been dead for a long time. And if, in fact, based on science, she was killed between 10 p.m. and midnight, then there's no way, scientifically, that it could have been Rodney.
Correct, 100%.
Because there's no way he was in that apartment.
By Jimmy's own statement, he said he was with her that night and didn't go to sleep till 11 o'clock or so. And then
so she was with her fiance during the time that Rodney is supposedly would have had to have killed her. based on science, correct?
Scientific evidence clearly states, right?
Yeah, and what's amazing is that, Detective Sergeant Gannon comes to me with this new information that he's got. And I hear him out. And this is something where we had been investigating the science in this case. There were serious problems with it already. He comes to me and he says, she was killed long before the state said. And we run this by the top forensic pathologists in the country. Michael Baden, Werner Spitz, the guy who wrote the book on forensic pathology. Mm-hmm. And they all agreed that it is medically and scientifically impossible for Stacey Stites to have been murdered in this 3-hour window that the jury was told as the way that this went down.
All right, well, coming up, 4 medical examiners say it is scientifically and medically impossible, just as they're saying, that Rodney murdered Stacey. And the state's own expert changes his testimony, or at least clarifies it and says that it has been really misinterpreted. We're going to find out what Rodney has to say about that next. Medical experts say she had twice as much fluid in her lungs than what you would normally expect someone to have if they had been killed by strangulation. What do you make of the fact that they're not rushing to give you a new hearing and bring all of this to light?
We now return to a Dr. Phil exclusive. Rodney Reed's death row countdown. Is an innocent man about to die?
When Rodney Reed was convicted of murder and sentenced to death, his jury never heard some of the information that we're hearing today from new witnesses, crime scene experts, and 4 different medical examiners. Now, Rodney's attorneys say that all of this scientific evidence proves Rodney deserves a new trial. Now, here's what Rodney has to say about all of this. What do you make of the fact that they're not rushing to give you a new evidentiary hearing and bring all of this to light? Medical experts say it's medically and scientifically impossible for you to be the killer. They say she didn't even die of strangulation. If she died of anything associated with that, it was drowning. She had twice as much fluid in her lungs than what you would normally expect someone to have if they had been killed by strangulations. So that doesn't fit with their narrative about you.
You know more than I do.
There's also the point that the driver's seat of that pickup truck had the seatbelt clasp in place where you would sit on it instead of put it on, which is reportedly a common practice for law enforcement officers who have to be ready to make a quick exit. Do you sit on your seatbelt or do you put it on?
I put my seatbelt on.
But yet, here you sit.
All that we've uncovered and presented to the courts, and the courts are still unwilling to listen. You know, racism goes through my mind. They got the evidence. They shouldn't overlook what's been developed.
Well, Dr. Sarah Wecht is a renowned forensic pathologist who has investigated many famous cases, including President John F. Kennedy, Elvis Presley, JonBenet Ramsey. And he's joining us on satellite now to tell us what he discovered after looking at Stacey's autopsy report. In your opinion, do you believe that Stacey was murdered before midnight?
Yes, Dr. Phil. There is simply no question from a forensic scientific standpoint that Stacey Stites was murdered before midnight. I would say without hesitation that this is one of the clearest, unequivocal cases of gross misjudgment, of travesty of justice that I've ever seen. You can argue about a lot of cases, and Dr. Phil, you and I have talked about some of these. In this case, there simply is no argument.
Well, let me tell you one thing additionally. This medical expert at the time, Dr. Roberto Bayardo, on August 13th of 2012, said time of death, if the prosecuting attorneys had advised me they intended to use my time of death estimate as a scientifically reliable opinion, I would have advised them not to do so. He went on to say, survival of sperm, the spermatozoa I found in Miss Stites could have been deposited days before her death. And with regard to sexual assault, there is no indication that the spermatozoa was placed there in any fashion other than consensually. If their own witness says, you misinterpreted what I said, you misused what I said, I now tell you that that is wrong, it seems to me they have to own that problem and step back from that conviction.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Absolutely. There's no way in the world that this can proceed.
And I appreciate your input, Doctor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Doctor.
Coming up, I asked Rodney a number of lie detection questions, things that do not have socially desirable, obvious answers. How did he do? I'll show you and tell you what I found next. If there was a retrial, is there any reason that the prosecution in this case would be able to come forward with a witness that said they saw you with Stacy at 3:45 in the morning, the day she died? I sat down with death row inmate Rodney Reed, who is less than 6 weeks away from his execution. I asked Rodney some very specific, what I call lie detection questions, and let's take a look. What should happen to someone that rapes and murders a young woman? But what should happen to the person that did what they did to Stacy?
I think they should go to prison and stay in prison.
So you think they should pay the price?
I think they should pay the price.
But that's not you.
That's absolutely not me.
If there was a retrial, is there any reason that the prosecution in this case would be able to come forward with a witness that said they saw you with Stacy at 3:45 in the morning, the day she died?
No, there would not be no witness to say nothing like that. If there was a witness to say that that witness, they would have had that witness at trial.
Could that kind of witness exist?
No. I mean, well, it depends. But I say no because there's absolutely no one that saw me with her at that time of night. If the state withheld evidence, if they want to fabricate something, I think they have the capability to do almost anything. I've been here 22 years.
You don't put anything past them at this point?
I don't put anything past them.
We talk at 125 words a minute, and we think at 1,400 words a minute. And if I ask you, is there any reason someone would say they saw you with her at 3:25 in the morning? If it takes you 5 seconds to answer that, a good chance you're lying when you say no. But if I ask you, is there any chance that any reason they would have a witness that said they saw you, and you say no? It's because you don't have to run anything through your mind because you know you weren't there, so no. And it's interesting to say he answered immediately and then later said, you know, I don't put anything past him. He seemed to be very truthful in his demeanor and not show any of the clusters that I would look for in lie behavior. Now, today and tomorrow, my studio audience will become a jury and vote on whether or not they think Rodney is guilty or innocent. Tomorrow, just when you thought you heard it all, there's a twist to this murder mystery. Rodney's team at the Innocence Project say the police never fully investigated Stacy's police officer fiance, a man with a troubling history of violence against women. And we'll meet a woman who put Stacy's fiance behind bars for 10 years. Plus, why one of Stacy's relatives says her opinion about Rodney has torn the family apart. And there are some things about Rodney that you don't know yet either.
Tomorrow on Dr. Phil, what happened to Stacy?
This is a female engaged to a cop, a white cop.
Jimmy Fennell was initially the key suspect in this case.
He's an absolute monster.
Did he ever have an inkling that you were in a relationship with her?
He told me, "You're gonna pay."
So it was a clear threat.
I took it that way.
No court has given any credence to any of this.
What the evidence shows.
The forensic evidence shows that Mr. Reed's guilt is impossible.
Why you?
I feel like I was just an easy target.
Did you buy that, what he just said?
Yeah, I'm buying some of it.
I think he put a mind virus on you.
Is an innocent man about to die?
There are even some people in Stacey Stites' family that believe you're innocent.
I don't believe that he murdered Stacey.
The clock is ticking.
With all this evidence, he must be free.
All of that's coming up. You do not want to miss tomorrow's episode. I want to thank my guest today. Tell me your thoughts about the case on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. I may read your comment on a future episode, but I definitely want to hear from you. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.